Let's do it.
Hello, everyone. You're listening to You Got It with Warrior Woman 91. All right. Thank you for joining me, everyone. And to everyone who tuned into the first episode of the show, I really appreciated all of the comments and the feedback that I got from the last episode, especially the ones that were upset about my rant about Pure Flix, because as we all know, Pure Flix movies are dreadful, and I was very glad to upset all of you. So thank you so much for just feeding into my rage in the comment section. It made me very, very happy. It is a point of contention, I know, with a lot of you. I like to say things that make people upset, and I hope that I say things within the course of this podcast that continue to make people upset. And that's why I brought on a guest to also make you upset with topics of discussion. So speaking of movies, which we weren't speaking of, but we are going to shortly. I have here a guest who has many opinions on movies and Hollywood in general. He's the editor of the Ben Shapiro Show Sunday Special, among other things, and co-host of the Gentleman Scofflaw podcast. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
That's correct.
With Jordan Crowder and an all-around nice guy, Donovan Fowler. Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelly. I feel like I want to put that description on my resume for any future. Just on my life resume.
Yes, on your life.
Editor of the Ben Shapiro Show Sunday Special, co-host of the Gentleman Scofflaw podcast, and all-around nice guy. I also have opinions on movies and Hollywood and stuff.
He does.
That's why I went to film school.
Yes.
But yes, I'm super happy to be here.
I'm very excited to have you here. So the first topic of discussion is going to be obviously movies, because you are a movie buff. You and I went and saw Captain Marvel.
Yes,
and
you sure did.
I don't think that I've actually gotten your full unbridled opinion on what you thought of Captain Marvel. So
I was gonna say, I was driving over here, and when you said that, when you texted me, we were gonna be talking about Captain Marvel. I was like, I took it for granted. I was like, oh yeah, Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh yeah, I think Kelly and I have differing opinions on this. So this is interesting, because what it hit me was, it's been like 2 weeks since the movie came out?
Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks, yeah. And we've had some time to get some, we've had a little bit of time away. We've had, a separation from Brie Larson since.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe you've gone back.
I have not gone back yet. I wanted to. I said I was going to, and I may not have told the truth there.
Quick segue. Is there a movie that you ever went back and, like, the most times you ever saw a movie in theaters?
Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Oh wow!
I saw 3 times.
Okay.
The first 2 times were back to back.
I saw it of a different sort.
Yeah, it was Saturday and Sunday. I went and saw it, and then I went and saw it a 3rd time the following weekend, because that is my favorite Marvel movie.
So that's the most you've ever gone.
That's the most I've ever gone to see a movie.
I saw Mad Max: Fury Road 5 times in theaters. Mm-hmm. It was a great experience. Yeah. I felt like George Miller should have just given me an obligatory DVD at that point. Mm-hmm. He should have just been like, you've spent enough money on this movie. I'll just give you the DVD.
I think at that point you kind of deserved it.
I've earned it, right?
So, but Captain Marvel.
Yes.
So my opinion on it was it was a decent movie. I enjoyed it. I had fun. I would like to go see it again.
Okay.
But again, I can see, like, there were flaws, there were plot holes, there were this and that.
Right. I mean, this is a similar sort of thing that I think I have to the movie Us, which I saw Friday, where I have tried to, like, in my critic sense, because as most, like, movie buffs, it's like I also dream of making movies and doing the art on my own. Where, eventually you have to step back and you have to say, how much am I just, like, critiquing? Like, it's the man in the arena that really counts. So it's like you can only critique so much, especially when it comes to movies, because it's all for entertainment anyways. But that being said, I think Captain Marvel to me was a very average Marvel movie.
Yeah.
And I think my main reaction to it was similar to Wonder Woman, although I feel like compared to Wonder Woman,
now, don't you go hating on Wonder Woman.
I'm not.
That's a totally different
I remember I had problems with Wonder Woman, specifically the third act, and maybe the style, but I wasn't going to go out. I wasn't going to go to war on Wonder Woman because I did think there were certain things about it that were interesting and fun and like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Captain Marvel has made Wonder Woman. It's boosted it in my opinion since, because Wonder Woman has so much more depth in that movie than Carol Danvers did.
Yeah.
I think that's one of my biggest issues with Captain Marvel specifically, is that her character is so boring. Like she's very much a blank slate. Yeah. And the problem, and it really comes down to character arc. I mean, I think that's been kind of my biggest issue with a lot of movies lately is, in fact, like 3 movies I've seen since, like Captain Marvel, Triple Frontier, and Us, I was always left saying, like, yeah, I liked these aspects of the movie, but there wasn't enough character to actually kind of make me want to really engage, you know?
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
it's a fair point. I mean, it's frustrating to me because it did feel like a filler movie.
Yeah.
But I feel like
obligatory.
I went into the movie thinking, because the right's all upset about it's an anti-men movie, it's anti-male, it's anti-this. And then the left is upset because, well, you just hate women and you hate this and you hate that, so therefore it must be a good movie because the right hates it.
Yeah.
And I went into it and I was like, okay, the right was wrong. It wasn't an anti-male movie. There was some feminist undertones, and there was a little bit of like hippie. You can do anything. You know if you just believe that kind of stuff. That gets on my nerves. But it wasn't so much that I didn't enjoy the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. I guess I recently said to somebody I enjoyed it more than Thor 2: The Dark World.
Well, most Marvel movies you'll
enjoy.
In
some respects, I found Thor 2: The Dark World a little bit more palatable in my mind because it had good comedy, but that isn't really a reason to like a Marvel movie. So anyways, I do I agree with you on that. I mean, I think that the politicizing of the whole thing has really become a big distraction.
Yeah.
Because most people wouldn't have taken issue with it.
Yeah.
Like somebody made the point, like people want to make it out that the patriarchy is just like looking to smash this movie. But in reality, it's like, well, if you look at Wonder Woman and Alita, Battle Angel, which is a more recent example, there was really no big movement against those movies. And they both had like, quote, strong female protagonists. Even Us, to a certain extent, has a strong female lead and hasn't been hammered because of that. So, I mean, Brie Larson kind of brought this upon the movie by making such big political statements outside of it. That being said, I will also say, though, there were moments in there where you were like, yeah, but this feels a bit preachy. You know, like the Gwen Stefani song starts playing when she starts beating up all the Skrulls. Yeah. And then like or maybe, I guess it wasn't the Skrulls. I guess spoiler alert, it was somebody else. But you know, like things like that. Even the whole like, oh, don't be so emotional. You know, don't be like. Basically, they were saying to her, don't be hysterical. Yeah. Which was strange because she never was. She was very. She never emoted really at all. She's very like, blank slate the entire time.
She's very, very deadpan, and she's hard to relate to. Yeah. Which is unfortunate because the character isn't in the comic books. The character is really fun, but the movie just kind of it just took all the personality away from her.
I think that's where it's really the failure is. I think they were so caught up with this. They were so caught up in the identity politics of it that they were obsessed with like, okay, this is going to be the first big female superhero for Marvel, so we have to get it right. So we're going to play it safe. Like,
it is silly though.
We're not gonna give her any sort of an arc because we're afraid of either making her like it's almost like
we're afraid to make her have any weaknesses or foibles or anything. It's kind of like Rey from Star Wars. We can't have her have any element of humanity because otherwise then she's not a strong female character, which is nonsense.
And that's the irony is that like because of I'm getting into more political like critical thesis here, but like basically because they're so afraid of the social justice Puritans, like they can't actually make an interesting story, which is a similar situation with pure flicks. It's like they're afraid that they're going to lose their, you know, their main critical audience, so they don't actually take risks the way that they should that would appeal to a universal audience and not really upset. Like, it would upset people, but maybe in the right way.
Yeah.
I don't know, or just make things interesting, which I think is upsetting people in the right way.
Pure flicks, my issue, I know this is getting off on a rabbit trail, but I love hating on pure flicks. I apologize, Jacob Berry. I know, just don't listen to this part of the episode. Please fast forward. The reason why I don't like those movies, as I said in the last episode, is because they're just not, they're not reality based. And I know movies don't have to be reality based. They can have elements of fantasy or nonsensical elements or stuff like that, but it's just pure flicks is, it's like candy. It's like it's. I think Andrew Clavin calls it Christian porn. It's what we wish things were, and it's just not real. And it's not real to the extent that it's unhealthy, not real.
Yes.
So that's my main issue with pure flicks.
Yeah, it paints the world in. I think, like, I was having this discussion with you earlier about how, like, I think if you look at classic literature, classical storytelling, the irony is that it takes the horribleness that we sometimes find in the world and seeks redemption through it. And that's the Christian story to begin with.
Yeah.
If you look at the New Testament, it's not rainbows and fairy dust.
Yeah.
It's, people getting stoned to death and crucifixions and, all sorts of.
But we're in the end times,
things.
You guys. We're the ones who are suffering right now. Don't listen to any of that.
So anyway, well, we could talk about, we could talk about that once we jump to the next topic. But
I have lots of topics.
but one thing, getting back to Captain Marvel, that I found interesting was I did seek out Black Panther after I watched Captain Marvel, just to kind of give it a little bit more of a second viewing. And when I saw Black Panther, I was very much close to the politics of it. Usually I try to leave a big buffer zone between seeing a movie like that and when people are actually talking about it so that I can kind of form my own objective view. But I saw it when it came out, and I remember thinking, this is a fun movie. 2/3 of it was very good, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked the villains. I thought the third act was garbage.
Yeah.
Because it was mostly stylistically how it was done.
My description of Black Panther is you could watch Lion King and you could get the gist of the movie.
True. But and that's kind of I think that's also where you sort of, and I'm just going off on tangents in my brain right now, so maybe this will work, or maybe it won't. But it's sort of like people put these movies on such a pedestal when it's like, yeah, but it's a movie. At the end of the day, we're not talking about Shakespeare here. Even though, Black Panther at times strikes me as kind of Shakespearean in the way that they treat the character, and I like that.
Yeah.
But it's a similar thing to, I was talking with somebody about Gladiator recently, and he was saying it was overrated. And I was like, and I just had the thought afterwards, I was like, yeah, it's not super deep. It's a little, fluffy in the way that it is, but it's a good story and it's a good movie, and it's good for the masses. And there's nothing wrong with it. So
that's kind of how I felt about Captain Marvel, just because I just wanted to go and have fun. I wasn't going to, and that's why I was relieved that there wasn't too much in the way of political messaging. It was there, but it wasn't so in my face that I couldn't just go and enjoy the movie for just enjoying the movie and not having some big overarching speak into my life moments, because that's not why I'm going to the movie.
I'm trying to think of a movie that I've seen recently that's really done that has been and maybe I'm not seeking them out, maybe I'm missing them, but there are, hey, can you remember a movie recently where it was so preachy that it was disgusting, you wanted to leave the theater?
Pure Flicks.
Other than Pure Flicks, think about with liberal ideology especially, or rather kind of
Zootopia.
Really?
Oh my gosh, have you seen Zootopia?
No, I haven't, but I have heard that basically it's like a fable. It's like a social justice fable.
It is.
Right?
There was just some very overt racism that I don't think that they intended to be in there, because it was basically the predator animals are one race, and the plant-eating animals were another race, and there were like characteristics that were just ingrained into each of these that they couldn't overcome. Yeah. That I just thought I'll have to go back and watch.
It's that contradiction that you find sometimes in that mentality where it's like you're saying that this is the way, you know.
Yeah, you're saying that we're actually biologically different because if they're trying to make the correlation between animals and race, it doesn't work. It actually encourages racism. Yeah. But if you want to know my full opinion on that, I do have an entire article in which I rip Zootopia on my website. So if you want to go back and read that, I'll actually put the link in the comments because that's a really good article. But that would be an example of overt political messaging. I had to go vomit afterwards. Right. That kind of thing.
I'm trying to remember. I don't have one in mind, but I do know that there have been times where I was like, this is bad. Yeah. This is bad.
I guess that's what I was worried about with Captain Marvel, and then it didn't happen, and so that's why I was like, my gosh, I was able to have fun.
There were pockets, and I think, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not super attached to anything about Captain Marvel, you know? Yeah. Like, maybe if they'd done a deeper dive on maybe like some of the Air Force stuff, like more of her pilot stuff, I would have been a little bit more interested. But it was like, you know, overall, I just wasn't as interested in it as I would be like Iron Man or, you know, which makes me sound like an incredible sexist.
You are a terrible person. I'm throwing you out right now.
Or even Wonder Woman for that matter, because Wonder Woman had the World War I angle, and I'm a huge history buff. So it's like I had more of an incentive to be interested in Wonder Woman than I did Captain Marvel.
Yeah. Captain Marvel, I felt like was a filler movie, unfortunately.
It was, yeah.
And
you didn't need it.
No. Yeah. But you kind of needed it just in the sense of now you know where this character came from, and now she's coming into Avengers Endgame and will save the world and all the rest of it with her fiery hair.
It is too bad, just the state of. I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I do think in the world that we live in, the state of sort of stories about heroes, and I don't know, there just seems to be something lacking in sort of the virtues and the values of the stories themselves. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because nobody really knows we're in a time of ambiguity. Mm-hmm. It's like nobody really wants to stand up for anything concrete and solid.
Yeah, unless it's leftists wanting to stand up for abortion. They wouldn't be satisfied unless Captain Marvel was performing an abortion.
Yeah, with her fire hands. Ooh, that's horrifying. That would be terrible. Wouldn't recommend you to that doctor. For many reasons. But anyways, I think it makes it really hard for me to get invested by the end of the movie. Yeah. Like when the fights are actually happening and stuff. It really has come.
What are you fighting for?
Right, yeah, like I can deal with the CGI mess to a certain extent when I actually feel invested in sort of values that I feel like are real. But a lot of times lately I feel like it's a little drummed up.
Yep. So my next question is more along the lines. Well, we are talking about morals and values, and my concern with Brie Larson's statements is: were they bad enough to feel the need to boycott? And if they weren't, are there people who have done things, or like Michael Jackson is a good example? Oh, yeah. Has his behavior now tainted his work and music and dancing and whatever? Have these people, I guess my question is there a point of this behavior is too bad, now I have to throw out the art with the behavior of the artist or the political views?
That's a really good, it's a good question. I mean, that's something that I pondered a lot.
It's something that I think about just because Michael Jackson was he was very instrumental in the kind of dance that I now do and kind of the prehistoric version of it. Yeah. And so I like to watch his videos to see where it came from. Right. But then I feel kind of guilty afterwards, like this guy was kind of messed up. Maybe I shouldn't be watching this kind of thing.
It's how I feel with, and it's not as similar because I could kind of take Roman Polanski's work or leave it. Mm-hmm. But I do have a very like sentimental attachment to Chinatown for the way it's shot and just the overall like feel of the story and stuff. I think it's a really good movie.
Yeah. But
I look at Roman Polanski and his history and I'm like, this is bad. You know, like, you know, so and other artists as well. It's, you know, the old adage, like, don't meet your heroes. So, you know, you have people like Mel Gibson even, who I grew up as a huge fan of, like one of the reasons that I got into filmmaking. And then I obviously saw all the stuff that came out about him, and I was like, that really like kind of taints my view of him. But obviously not all things are equal. Yeah. So like with the Michael Jackson thing, like I've heard of radio stations not playing his music and stuff of that nature. And it's tough because it is like, it's history. Like it's there. Yeah. Wasn't there actually like a performance he did called History? Probably. I think it was. Yeah. So that was a terrible pun. But it's there and there's a lot to be learned because he was an amazing performer. Like he was like an amazing artist. Yeah. But he was obviously, I think it's all true, a terrible person. Yeah. I don't think you can erase history. I think as far as boycotting it, like I think there's a time and a place. Like for example, like with Michael Jackson's music right now, if radio stations choose not to play it, that's their prerogative. And I think like right now it's like such a sensitive time that basically it may not be the best time to do it. But at the same time, you can make the argument we should just continue on as normal and just acknowledge, like it should be there to sort of stoke the debate. Like, you know, like we should put the work out there and then people should actually find a way to deal with it and actually have conversations about it.
Yeah, I'm certainly not on the side of the argument that says we should ban these kinds of things. I'm not for banning anything. Right. Like, put it all out there. I want to know.
Don't burn books.
I want to know all of the terrible things so that then I can make an informed decision. If I don't know all of the things, then I don't make an informed decision. Right. But it's just something that I actually think about a lot, and I've actually talked about with a lot of people. At what point do we have to throw everything out? Is there that point? So...
No, I don't think so. I think the more you try to put a chokehold on something, the more backlash you're going to end up getting, whether it's just like through nature or you know whatever. But yeah, I'm not one to uphold censorship in any way. So yeah, and as far as boycotting goes, I've recently heard a lot of arguments that say that like boycotting isn't even worth it, and it's not really even something that we should be considering. When Captain Marvel came out, I was really, really put off by Brie Larson's comments. Like I was like, okay, you're not being very intelligent right now. Like you're not
turning off the majority of your audience
making
right
an intelligent argument, and I see through what you're doing, and I feel like you think I'm an idiot. So I don't really want to see your movie, you know? So, in other words, like...
And then you did anyway.
The only reason I went to see the movie was for the people I was seeing it with, which my brother and sister were in town, and then you were going to go see it. So I was like, okay, great. Like, here's a good group. Like, it's a good opportunity to get out and be entertained. Yeah. And that was the gist of it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have seen it. Yeah. But at the same time, I wouldn't have been, like... standing so firm on like I'm not going to see Captain Marvel.
It's a principled thing.
I would have probably like if somebody wanted to go see it, I would have been like, okay, well here's an opportunity to dissect another movie, you know, and find maybe where they've screwed up or where they've triumphed.
And earn a place on this podcast. Yes, because you happen to go see a movie.
Look at that.
All right, so we're going to move on just a little bit, just kind of on the subject of how the left and Democrats are becoming more and more fond of this idea that we need to insert minorities and women into movies in order to somehow make up for past wrongs that have been done to these communities. And now there's discussion of reparations. We need to start, you know, paying people back for the wrongs of our ancestors, so on and so forth. What is your take on that? Is modern society now responsible to pay back minority communities in this fashion in order to make up for what happened to ancestors in the past, and is this kind of tokenism of we're going to now put you in these movies and put you in the spotlight here and there and in media, is that actually going to make up for what happened in the past?
No. And I come from two different like spheres of thought on this. The first is that I think everybody's had something done to their people, and it's usually a matter of how much time has passed to actually, like, you know, obviously certain people are closer to their injustices and, you know, their pain than others.
Yeah.
But if I were to go back to Ireland and you know, go into County Kerry and demand that, you know, the land that certain British people stole from my ancestors were given back to me, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And I don't think that would be a just way of going about it. You know, I think like it's like the past is the past a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I think within the context of the time, like obviously there are legal, like there's legal statutes of limitations that allow you to, you know, kind of maybe look at a case where it's like, oh, this person took this land from my father and it was unjust. Can you prove it? Yeah. Okay. Well, then we'll figure something out in court. But right now we're so withdrawn from it, and also the other sphere of thought that I was referencing was that we've already done what people are suggesting, which is basically like a heightened form of welfare in a way, has already been done. It's like we've destroyed minority communities through this misguided and I think sometimes even bad attempt to help them, like, or to garner their support. Yeah. And you look at that, and you just look at African American neighborhoods, especially, which were bulldozed and made into projects, and like there's a very good argument to be made that they would have been much stronger if not for this sort of, you know, Lyndon B. Johnson helping hand. What was it? It was basically the war on poverty. You know, war on poverty. It's like that they'd be stronger now if they had actually been left to work their way up like everybody else, instead of being treated like children or like, you know,
it's very infantilizing. Yeah.
So that's my view on it. I just feel like you're not gonna raise the dead. You're not going to be able to, you know, typically you're not going to be able to set everything right in the past. So trying, once again, like the more you try to put a chokehold on something, the more, you know, thrashing and like, you know, probably the more it's going to damage things. So I feel like it's like the best course of action is like, what can you do right now moving forward to actually help people?
I do feel like it kind of, this idea that you can, just by putting minorities in a movie, that somehow is going to help right the wrongs of the past. It really just cheapens how drastic and how terrible the things that happened in the past were. Oh, if we just give you some money, if we just do this, if we just put a Band-Aid over it, then that's going to actually fix it. It's also funny to me that it's generally the party that actually instituted things like slavery and Jim Crow that are now, oh no, now we have to do these things to atone for our sins. And we now have to, and we need to bring in everybody else to do it too, even if we weren't involved. My ancestors weren't here during slavery.
Right, exactly.
And Jim Crow was already
mine were dying of the potato famine. So
mine were farming the fields in some Italian countryside somewhere.
Well, now your family has to pay my family reparations for having so much wealth in Italy when we were starving to death.
Exactly. I mean, this is how this works. We gotta
give me $5. Give me $5 right now.
Yeah, it's a real problem. But I don't like how these terrible things that happen in history just get cheapened by if we just put a Band-Aid over it, and then that'll make it better. And it's also in the end, it continues to exacerbate the continuation of those problems now, because back in the 90s when I was a kid and everything was perfect, I used to think I would learn about racism and I would think, oh yeah, I'm glad we don't have that anymore.
Right.
I'm glad like, my next door neighbor was Asian and there was black kids and like it didn't matter. And I was like, oh yeah, we don't have that.
Guys, there's a black kid on Stranger Things. I think that's what we need to take away from this.
That's what we need to take away. Yeah.
But seriously, I mean, it is like this constant reopening of wounds is not good. And it shows a real despair in any sort of hope that we can heal. I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that basically, even I was reading an analysis of the movie Us, which I thought was
you really like this movie.
I just it's on my mind. I don't think it was as good as people are saying. Like, I think the 95% on Rotten Tomatoes or whatever is just false. But that being said, there was an analysis of it, and it was basically making the case that, like, you know, things never were good. They aren't good now. So we need to just break it all down. We need to just burn it all down. It's this radicalism that's, to be frank, very Marxist. And it is a total despair in any sort of true hope for like an actual reconciliation amongst people on an individual level or just a societal level. And it's sad. I mean, it's really sad. And it also puts... It's racist in the... I mean, this argument has been made a lot with affirmative action, which, like, this is an affirmative action of a different sort when you're putting minorities and people into these situations that, you know, the individual hasn't earned based on their skin color. Yeah. Is a racism of a different sort. It's it's like, well, don't you see that you're making race the issue again? And they do see that. That's the irony. Is that a lot of times they do see that, and their answer is, well, yeah, I don't care. Yeah. Like, I don't care because nothing has worked up until this point. So once again, we're just going to burn it all down, and I'm the boss. Yeah. To quote, you know. They don't actually have the best interests of the minority communities at heart, because they have another agenda. Their agenda is to absolve themselves or absolve history of its sins. It's not actually to make these people's lives better, because the best way to do that, obviously, is to just leave them alone, stop harassing them, and let them run their own lives, because only they can know the best way to run their own lives. Not Mr. Smith in Washington, who's not going to be able to figure it out for them. Yeah, right now I think we're dealing with just a huge crisis of faith, and I think people just they're afraid. I mean, I think they're afraid of that things are never going to be right. You know, I mean, you know, it's like, as a Christian, like, I have Christian hope. Like, I have a Christian hope that eventually things are going to pan out and that things will be okay. And even if they don't here on earth, that eventually I'm going to see salvation on the other side. But a lot of people now in the secular society don't have that. So the only thing that they can possibly grasp for is some sort of reparation here on earth. Fixing it now and fixing it here. And once you realize that maybe that'll take generations to implement, and if you're not selfless, if you're a pretty selfish person, which a lot of people are, I mean, we live in a very narcissistic culture, you start to thrash and, like, because you're about to drown, and you're just going to bring everybody down with you. Yeah. You know, because it's just survival. It's a really weird mentality, and that doesn't absolve anybody of what they're doing. Yeah. But I do think that's at the core of what's happening to people and their mentality today. Well, on that positive and wonderful note, speaking of, we've been discussing a lot about atoning for sins and everything, and this brings me to my favorite part of the conversation. The whole reason I brought you in here is to whole reason, not the whole reason. I gotta go. Donovan's just jumping off the balcony right now. No, but one of the things that I enjoy talking to Donovan about is Catholicism versus Protestantism, because Donovan is a Catholic and I'm Protestant. And I just wanted to to open up the forum a little bit and allow Donovan to kind of give the Catholic advocacy push right here. Yes. This is your moment. This is your big moment. I will keep my big mouth shut and just let you talk. Oh my gosh. Basically, what is your definition of Catholicism, and why choose it over Protestantism? Okay, so well, first let me preface with I'm probably not the right I'm not the best envoy for the papists to send in this mission, but I will take it upon myself to answer your questions. I'm not Matt Walsh. I'm not Michael Knowles. I'm not, St. Thomas Aquinas. But okay, so to answer your question, how I would define Catholicism is, I obviously there's the actually formal definition of being a part of the Catholic Church and submitting to the Catholic Church and actually following Catholic doctrine and things like that. Practicing it is a big thing. A lot of people like to be cultural Catholics, and that means not really going to Mass or going to Mass and not actually holding any serious Catholic values. And by Catholic values, I mean, like I said, like doctrine, things that have been passed down through apostolic succession and things that are, deemed correct by the magisterium, which is basically the kind of sort of the teaching council in the church to go over scripture and things and actually make sure things are correctly interpreted. But as far as Catholicism, also defined in more of a, I guess, sort of philosophical way, I would say Catholicism means universality, like that it's universal. And I think that a lot of the values that I hold true as a Catholic, I often find echoed back to me in other cultures that may not even consider themselves Catholic. And that's where, finding salvation is kind of an interesting thing because it's like you start to find a bond with, especially in Western culture, these values that were around even before Christ walked the earth, or that were around by people who didn't even identify with Christ and were ignorant of him. And it's sort of this what do they call it? It's like a salvific link, I think is the word, where you actually start to find commonalities with people who may not even have known Jesus. It's interesting. So anyways, that's sort of my long convoluted idea of Catholicism.
And so my view of
I guess I also should have said how I would define between Protestant and Catholic. So basically, and I did my homework.
He did his homework.
She sees I have notes.
He's got a book full of notes.
Not all of these. I have 2 pages of notes, maybe 3. But I have 2 pages of notes where basically the differences between Catholics and Protestants are typically brought out by like I was saying, apostolic succession. I think is a big thing that sets us apart and that typically gives Catholics more of their that confirms Catholics' worldview, and that we actually have a lineage of bishops back to the apostles. The necessity of the magisterium is another one, and like I said, that's actually submitting to the council of the church that actually interprets the faith and goes about in the 4th century fought heresy during the controversy around Christ's divinity. We look at things like that and the place and time we say, okay, those people are endowed with special graces by the Holy Spirit to actually interpret things and to kind of set the meaning right or to really divine the truth. And then on top, basically the actual promises that Christ made in regards to the church, I would say, and that's obviously outside of that we have the Mass and certain the sacraments and certain traditions that set us apart as well.
So my view of Protestantism is, and this is not, when I say Protestantism, I definitely am not necessarily referring to evangelicalism because I have a lot of issues with evangelicalism. But at the end of the day, my understanding of Christianity is It is the acknowledgement that there's nothing that human beings can do to attain salvation. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole reason. It's the answer to the question that everybody asks and nobody has the answer to of why Jesus actually had to die, mm-hmm. is because you can't do anything. He mm-hmm. had to do it. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I take issue with Catholicism, because I perceive it as there's X, Y, and Z that you now have to do mm-hmm. in order to attain salvation, in addition to Jesus had to die, and now you have to do X, Y, and Z. So how would you counter that?
So I guess this is an interesting. This is like a common thing, a point of contention between Catholics and Protestants mm-hmm. that is like faith and works versus mm-hmm. faith alone, mm-hmm. right? Like, I mean, Martin Luther was basically of the solo scriptura mm-hmm. View of like it only takes faith to bring about salvation, mm-hmm. correct?
Yeah.
So I actually read an essay about this, which I go back to every once in a while because it's a little dense and it's not exactly super easy to understand. But it talks about this, and it talks about it in terms of justification, mm-hmm. which I think is oftentimes what it comes down to. Like that term justification, mm-hmm. I think refers to the Catholic and the Protestant worldview in terms of faith versus faith and works. Mm-hmm. And the conclusion that I reached was that it's true that salvation doesn't really come about by any merit on our part. Mm-hmm. Like, we submit ourselves to God, mm-hmm. and we can't control whether or not we're saved. Mm-hmm. In some ways, mm-hmm. it's like it's really by His grace that we are saved.
Yeah. I do like the analogy of you are literally a dead body. You are a corpse, mm-hmm. and you can't raise yourself from the dead.
Right. And I think that's true. I mean, well, yeah, of course, obviously that's true. But the one thing I was thinking about this on the way over here. Now, do you, in your view of Protestantism, do you find that baptism is necessary for salvation?
I do not.
Okay.
But I think it is an important thing that accompanies salvation.
Okay.
But just based on the example that's often given is the thief on the cross, uh-huh. and he didn't have to get baptized, and he clearly got saved.
Gesmus, I think it was his name. I love that. Like, that's my favorite part of Passion of the Christ, mm-hmm. or one of my favorite parts, I should say, is when that thief. I don't know. It always brings tears to my eyes because it is like that, like the one thing that you dream about, you know, as a Christian, like to actually find yourself in a situation where you're able to affirm your faith before death. Mm-hmm. That being said, I think like one thing that I was thinking about, because I recently, for various reasons, had been doing sort of a deep dive on like a study of Alcoholics Anonymous. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at kind of their.
What are you saying, Donovan?
We're not like this podcast is not whiskey. So, although actually, I'm going to scare the hell out of the scofflaws, the gentlemen scofflaws. If they're listening to this, by the way, I know I gave up I gave up being an alcoholic for Lent. No, I gave up alcohol for Lent. Jeez, Freudian slips all over the place here. No, but I was not. I was not doing it for any personal reasons other than for some research for a story that I was writing. But I was looking at it, and it kind of came to me as I was driving on the way over here that, you know, in Alcoholics Anonymous, you have to submit to a higher power. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that I was sort of revisiting again and again in sort of stories from different alcoholics who had started the program mm-hmm. was that it wasn't just that submission that saved them ultimately. Mm. Like, it was that submission that brought them to a place where they could be saved, but it was sort of a growth in righteousness and cooperation with grace that allowed them to continue. And it wasn't, and in that sense, like, I think, and a lot of addicts could probably sympathize, like they could connect to this, is that it's not just going to be going through the motions mm-hmm. that's going to keep you sober, mm-hmm. but it's going to be actual like surrender and like actual spiritual work and things like that. Like it takes like a work of the Spirit as well, like a movement of the Spirit. And that's how I view the faith versus faith and works argument, is that it really doesn't come down to either. It really is like your surrender and submission to God to begin with, and then sort of a constant cooperation and growth in that process. And I see that as like the sacraments being integral to that, and like acts of charity as being integral to that. Just like being a good person on a daily basis, treating myself right, and things like that. So that's kind of my view on it. That was the conclusion that this essay came to as well. And I think the guy was it was a Catholic, and he was trying to really kind of put that contention to bed, like that maybe people are looking at the wrong things when they think about this, because like I said, like at the end of the day, it's not going to be going through the motions, and it's not going to be just one single oh, okay, I believe that's necessarily going to keep you on the right track. But then again, disclaimer, I am not a theologian, and I haven't gone to seminary, and
as he goes into his gossipy voice.
The famous gossipy voice. Have you heard the one about Pope Francis? But that being said, I as a practicing Catholic, I am constantly trying to grow in my faith and cooperate with God's grace on a daily basis, and I find that that's what typically keeps me on track.
Well, that wasn't so hard.
I know, I was terrified when you said we're going to be talking about the differences between. I felt like Rex from Toy Story, where he's like, I don't like confrontation. I was like, do I need to put on my Crusader outfit for this one?
Well, you can put on the Crusader outfit.
I should have done my best Matt Walsh impression.
You could have done that, and I could have shown up in the full Martin Luther garb.
Robe.
That would have been appropriate. But as you can see, Donovan's still here. He's still alive.
I am.
I'm not that scary. I'm just a little scary.
Thank God. Yeah. We live in a country where we've speaking of like reparations and past being sort of not settled, but like things coming to a peaceful existence. Like I said, like I come from a place where people were killing each other over stuff like this. There was politics involved as well. But thank God Christians aren't killing each other over these things, and that we actually can sit down and have a conversation, much like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis of the old days. So
I'll be Tolkien and you can be C.S. Lewis.
Oh boy!
Even though Tolkien was the Catholic, and
I don't know. I don't know. I think I definitely even beyond faith.
Was C.S. Lewis Catholic or was
no?
He
was there. There are rumors.
Oh,
there are rumors. They have converted.
Did you hear the one about C.S. Lewis?
But Clive, have you heard the one about Clive Staples Lewis? That being said, so I'm glad that we can all have a civil conversation about this.
And then after the show, I'll beat you overhead with a stick.
And
we'll keep that off.
If there's a photo that accompanies this, I'll have a big black eye.
There you go. All right. Well, Donovan, where can people find you to follow your work or social media, anything like that?
I'll plug the Gentleman Scofflaw podcast, which I don't know how political I've ever been on that podcast. People probably,
the pumpkin spice discussion was definitely the most controversial.
This is true. So this may open people up to a new angle of my life and faith and politics that they haven't seen before. But I would highly recommend that podcast. It's not nearly as deep as this has been, but we like to have a good time and just sit around and talk about whiskey and manly things, I suppose, gentlemanly things. Have a smoke every once in a while. So there's that, and I guess I'll plug the work that I do with the Ben Shapiro Sunday Special. I would highly recommend it. I think it's always a great source of differing worldviews. It enriches the intellectual mind.
Absolutely. That's definitely a deeply intellectual show if I ever watched one. So I just wanted to give a shout out to @ChadAbbott on Twitter for my little Twitter shout out at the end of my show. Definitely go give him a follow. I'm trying to get him to 1,000 followers. So @ChadAbbott on Twitter. And thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed my guest. I think he enjoyed being here.
No, thank you for having me on.
Even if I'm a little bit scary, it's totally fine. I will see you guys on the next episode, or you guys will listen to me. Hopefully we'll start doing these as video format soon coming up. But for now, I'm just doing the audio only. So just stay tuned. It's coming. I know you guys miss my face, but you'll get over it one of these days. You've been listening to You Got It with Warrior Woman 91. Tune in next time. We'll have all kinds of great guests and great content for you, so stay tuned.